In today's show, is Scoot Henderson a lock to be available at 3 when the Blazers are on the clock? Plus, a brief history and the risks of trading the number 3 overall pick. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making the show your first listen every day, coming at you every single weekday. So make it part of your daily routine, Monday through Friday. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we're having a bunch of fun. We're talking about the 3rd overall pick. There is some reporting that suggests Scoot Henderson's stock is dropping, and he could be available at 3, or very likely to be available at 3 when the Blazers are on the clock. I also want to visit a brief history, the last 25 years roughly, the 21st century history of teams trading the number 3 overall pick, and discuss the risky business, the inherent risk involved in the Blazers trying to deal a top draft pick, a needle that they may or may not try to thread. We'll discuss that a little bit later, but if they do, there are some inherent risks involved in the history of trading number 3 overall pick. Will help us get a sense of those risks. But first, we might have a little clarity about who's going to be there. In a recent article published on ESPN.com, Jonathan Givony, the ESPN's draft expert, draft insider, longtime cover of the NBA draft for Draft Express, reporter, I think is probably the word I was looking for there. But Givony reports that, quote, most teams have Brandon Miller ranked ahead of Scoot Henderson on their draft boards. Now, I don't know what most teams means. Does most teams mean that Givony has talked to all 30 teams in the last week and 16 of them have Brandon Miller ahead of Scoot? Does it mean 28 of them have Brandon Miller ahead of Scoot? Does it mean, or does it mean that he's talked to 7 teams in the last week, like, on the phone, representatives of 7 teams, and 5 of those 7 have Brandon Miller over Scoot? The language doesn't matter. The reporting matters. And most teams suggest that the Blazers might have Scoot on the board, not Brandon Miller, and it provides sort of that clearer picture. And if you're an everyday listener, shout out to my everydayers, this doesn't come as much of a surprise. On Friday's show, Rafael Barlow, host of Locked On NBA Big Board, long time on Rafael's Big Board. That's why I love Raf. He's not afraid to go against the grain, does his own reporting and says, if this isn't the consensus, this is what I think. And he had Brandon Miller rated ahead of Scoot Henderson since basically the early in the draft cycle, before it was a popular opinion, or in this case now, perhaps shared by many teams across the league. And if you listen to Friday's show, Rafael laid out why that might be the case. Scoot Henderson kind of took his foot off the gas the second half of the G League team. And that exact same example that Rafael Barlow talked about on Friday's show is the same thing that Jonathan Givony wrote over the weekend, is that scouts and teams were less impressed by the second season in the G League for Scoot Henderson. As Rafael pointed out, really good in that mid-season showcase in Vegas. They played against Victor Wembanyama. Scoot Henderson was fantastic in those 2 games. And the second half of the G League season just took his foot off the gas. Some availability stuff, and just sort of as he wasn't an ascending prospect anymore. He was a guy maybe cruising into the draft process. And for Brandon Miller had a struggle in the NCAA tournament, but as Rafael Barlow pointed out, it's like, would you rather a guy, struggle, or someone who seems like he's maybe kind of dialing it back a little bit? The effort stuff matters. I don't think this is super damning for Scoot. I don't think falling from 2 to 3 is the end of your career. But when you get to this time of year, this is the stuff folks are parsing. And it seems like the concerns that Rafael Barlow had and shared on this very program are concerns held by scouts across the league, according to ESPN's Jonathan Givony. This provides the Blazers with some clarity, with a clearer picture of who might be available at 3. I don't think it makes the decision much easier. If this reporting is true, Charlotte, who holds the number 2 overall pick, is going to choose Brandon Miller. This is obviously smokescreen season. It's lion season. If teams are going to lie, we're 10 days out from the NBA draft. It's a great time to lie. But I think in general, Givony's reporting is not from Charlotte's perspective. It is sort of a general thought around the league. And if this is the case, it provides the Blazers with clarity and a clearer picture of who's going to be available. It's going to be the 6'2 guard, and the Blazers will have to make a tough decision. It is a 6'2 potentially franchise point guard, future All-NBA point guard at 6'2", the type of player they want to add to this roster. Like I said, clarity, because you might know who it is, clearer picture of knowing who it might be, but not an easier decision, a funkier, more challenging decision. And I think that's where they find themselves. Prior to the draft lottery, it was pretty clear the Blazers had sent the pretty obvious signals that when they got their lottery pick, they were going to package it and trade it for veteran help to build around Damian Lillard. And then they moved up from 5 to 3. And when you get a top 3 pick, the decisions about keep it, trade it, get a little bit trickier because traditionally speaking, this is where stars have come from across the league. So in the second segment, I want to talk about the history of trading the number 3 overall pick and provide a sort of the 21st century look at what trading the 3rd overall pick has meant for teams, both good and bad. That's what we'll do in the second segment. The Blazers might know who they're going to have a chance to select, but it does make the trade it, keep it conversation a little bit trickier. So we'll talk about the history of the pick and the risk with trading the number 3 overall pick in the second and third segment. Join me there. But first, I want to tell you that this episode and this show is brought to you by BetterHelp. It's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you and never take a moment to think about what you need from yourself. Life is challenging and moves quickly, and when you spend all your time giving, it can leave you feeling stretched thin and burned out. And therapy can help give you the tools to find more balance in your life so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. Listen, therapy can be super helpful if you're experiencing an acute traumatic event, a single event that is very traumatic, and you want to have therapy to help you get through it. But it can also just be routine maintenance for your brain and your body. Like you can benefit without an acute traumatic moment of just having the tools to make the way you think about yourself in your daily life easier. And that's where BetterHelp can come in because it's totally online. It's meant to be easy to access and cheap. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. So just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and then you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge if that isn't working for you. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try and find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right. Got a whole bunch of fun shows this week. Make the show your first listen today and then come back tomorrow. Josh Lloyd of Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to join to talk all about the Blazers and some reporting he's done on how they're going to approach their future. You're not going to want to miss that one. We got other interviews lined up this week. Going to be a fun week of shows as we head into the draft, so stick with us. All right, let's talk about a brief history of trading the number 3 overall pick. I went back to the year 2000 to look at all the times that the number 3 overall pick had been traded. And I'm not really looking for trades like prior trades, trades that happened years in advance as a future pick. Oh, they traded the 3rd pick, but they traded it in 2013 as an amorphous pick, and it turned out to be Jaylen Brown in 2017. Like that's not exactly what I'm looking for. I'm talking you have the draft rights, you go into draft night, and you trade that pick on draft night, and sort of I think painting this history will give you a sense of what the Blazers are up against. Now, to be clear, as a clear caveat, 2 things. 1, I am in the make the pick camp. I'm firmly in the just draft at 3 because that's where stars come from. And 2, I'm talking about this because the Blazers have kind of sent signals prior to the lottery that they were, we're going to package this pick and make this trade. And now they're sending signals that they are comfortable keeping the pick unless they are blown away by the trade package. And let's talk about historic trade packages to think about what the Blazers might want in a current trade package. So join me in the Wayback Machine as we go all the way back to the 2001 NBA draft when the Atlanta Hawks were on the clock at number 3. And they made a trade for a future all-star. They sent the Brevin Knight, Lorenzen Wright, and the draft rights to the number 3 overall pick, which turned out to be Pau Gasol, to the Vancouver Grizzlies in exchange for Shareef Abdul-Rahim, and the draft rights to number 27 in that draft, which was Jamal Tinsley. Shareef Abdul-Rahim was immediately an all-star, made his lone all-star game immediately that season, the 01-02 season. Shareef Abdul-Rahim, all-star baby. Here's the challenge, though. Pugh won Rookie of the Year and went on to have a Hall of Fame career. He was immediately very, very good and was excellent for the Grizzlies prior to, moving to Memphis, getting traded to the Lakers, all those things. Pau was really good, and that is sort of the challenge ahead of you. Even if you trade for an immediate all-star help, Sharif Abdur-Rahim was a bucket. Don't get it twisted. Dude was a bucket and was good for the Hawks immediately good for the Hawks. And trading out of that number 3 overall pick for immediate all-star was probably the wrong move without a doubt. In 2005, your Portland Trailblazers had the rights to the number 3 overall pick. Oh no, you might have heard that they had Sebastian Telfair, so they weren't interested in 2 of the point guards at the top of the draft, Darren Williams and Chris Paul. So they traded the rights to number 3 for 2 picks in 2005. The rights to the number 5 overall pick and the rights to 27 plus a future 2006 first round pick that ended up being from the Detroit Pistons that fell all the way to 30th because the Pistons were really good. Shout out to Mr. Big Shot, Chauncey Billups. Trading from 3 back to 5, getting 2 additional first round picks is relatively good value, but it doesn't come without a risk. The Utah Jazz took Deron Williams. The Blazers took Martell Webster at 5. Deron Williams made 2 All-NBA teams in his first 5 seasons in Utah. He was really good and the leader of a team, along with Carlos Boozer, that was, making playoff pushes during his first 5 seasons. Martell Webster was shaped like an NBA player and eventually had an interest in photography and rap music. It's a risk. Joel Freeland's cool, though. In 2008, Minnesota traded back from 3 to 5, sending the rights to O.J. Mayo, who they drafted at 3, to Memphis in exchange for Kevin Love. Both guys made the all-rookie team, but Kevin Love made 3 all-star games in 7 seasons in Minnesota and was one of the best rebounders in the league. This is an example of trading back 3 to 5 and getting your guy, getting real value. Of all the picks we're going to go over from in the last 23 seasons in the 21st century, this is the best one, is Minnesota trading back from 3 to 5, O.J. Mayo swap for Kevin Love. Yeah, I think there is former AAU teammates, by the way. I think there is risk involved, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible to find value when trading the 3rd overall pick. This is probably close to the best case scenario. Know who you want deeper down the draft board. Nail the pick. It wasn't a straight swap. There were some other players involved, but that's who you need to know. In 2011, Enes Kanter, he was the number 3 overall pick. The rights to Enes Kanter and Derek Favors, along with Devin Harris. The New Jersey Nets said, we don't need that. We want a star. And they traded that trio, Kanter, Derek Favors, the number 2 overall pick in the previous draft, and Devin Harris to Utah in exchange for Deron Williams and a future first-round pick. Deron Williams made an all-star team immediately that season. That was the lockout year. Immediately that season, and then signed a giant contract, got hurt, kind of disappeared, and things went south. This was another example of trading, young parts for a star, the type of thing the Blazers have kind of been linked to. Enes Kanter didn't sniff any all-star games. Derek Favors didn't sniff any all-star games. Devin Harris, solid NBA player for a long time, didn't sniff any all-star games. I guess maybe you could have talked yourself into him making some all-star games at some point in his career, but not really. Generally speaking, this was a trade where Utah got good, right? Like they got the core of they had a bunch of bigs at this point if you don't remember the sort of like this early part of the second decade of the aughts, Utah, a bunch of giant people, and was like a solid low-level playoff team, not much more, and they kind of bridged the gap to Gordon Hayward and beyond before they actually got good in the next era of the next generation of the Jazz. But like, you get solid players for number 3. Deron Williams, I don't think you like. It's hard to say. Like, do they deeply regret it? I don't know. He was an all-star immediately. The only person who's all-star swapped in the trade, and then he got hurt. Like, it's a bad trade for the New Jersey and then Brooklyn Nets in the end. But it's bad because of health, probably, than like the prospects you give up. This one I think is like the inherent risks of all trades, but not necessarily the inherent risk of trading 3rd overall pick Enes Kanter. In 2017, The Celtics had the number 1 overall pick, and they traded back from 1 to 3. Philadelphia, holders of the number 3 overall pick, they traded up to take 1. There was a future first-round pick that went to Boston and ended up being Romeo Langford. Drafting is hard. They had the 14th overall pick, and they certainly did not get it right. This isn't really about the risks. Philly made a totally fine, calculated gamble. I think trading up to 1 and trading a future first that ended up being like the last pick in the lottery it's kind of fine. This is about how drafting is hard. They took Markelle Fultz. Jason Tatum fell to 3. The Celtics got an all-NBA, borderline MVP, or at least like an MVP candidate type of player at 3. And Philly got a guy who, and had a bunch of weird health and maybe some sort of mental block stuff and had to go the other way. Like they had to trade him and dump him and usher in a new era and all the stuff, right? This, in terms of just like trade value, if you get it right, this is not that bad of a trade. We're trading up from 3 to 1, which is like not what the Blazers, they're not going to trade up in the draft. No one's going to get up to 1 to get Wembanyama. But like in general, this is more of a cautionary tale about how hard it is to get draft picks right than it is about anything else. And it's hard to get draft picks right. I don't think Philly, in this case, I don't think Philly did something that's like deeply wrong. They did something that was a worthy risk and screwed it up because it's hard to do it right. The following year in 2018, the Hawks had the 3rd overall pick and traded back from 3 to 5. They sent Luka Doncic to Dallas and got a future unprotected first-round pick and Trae Young. Yikes. Trae Young's really good. Trae Young's going to make somewhere between like 5 and 10 All-Star games in his career. He's really good. He's not close to Luka Doncic. Cam Reddish, the 10th overall pick, just ended up not panning out. Again, drafting's hard. Romeo Langford, Cam Reddish, like it's hard to get it right. This is the challenge, right? This is it. You can even be 100% correct in identifying a very good player, but trading out might, you might just be wrong in your evaluation. Luka Doncic is not a very good player. He's an all-time great. He's made multiple All-NBA first teams in his first 5 NBA seasons. He's going to be a perennial MVP candidate. He's really stinking good. Like he is on pace to be one of the best players in the history of the NBA. Trae Young is on pace to be an 8-time, 9-time All-Star. That's a pretty good outcome, but it ain't Luka Doncic. I think in general, what you are seeing as you look at this is like, there aren't a lot of times in which a team has traded the number 3 overall pick and gotten superior value. Celtics did it, but I think the Celtics did it because they knew that Fultz was going to be gone and they had pegged Jason Tatum. That's as much about having a good scout as it is to good draft team as it is to about sort of the value of trades. The Minnesota and Kevin Love thing is similar with flipping OJ Mayo for K-Love. But those are outcomes that are pretty positive. The Celtics had the number 1 overall pick and traded back. It's a little bit different value. Minnesota had to attach some vets to make it happen Memphis had to attach some vets to make it happen to ended up with OJ Mayo. They got it wrong. But I think in general, you're seeing the challenge. Sharif Abdur-Rahim, Darren Williams, all-stars right away, and players that you're sending back that weren't, deeply impactful. Pau Gasol ended up being deeply impactful, but like Derek Favors, Enes Kanter, you maybe not regret getting rid of those guys, but there is inherent risk in making any of these trades. Let's talk about the risky business ahead for the Trailblazers. But first, let's talk about PrizePicks. It's daily fantasy made easy. I play PrizePicks on the app. You can play it wherever you want, including go to prizepicks.com as well if that's what you're into. And right now, you don't have much time as you were listening to this, but through the NBA Finals, which could end tonight, might end later this week, PrizePicks is picking one user for a chance to become a millionaire. You got to place an entry after 8 a.m. Eastern time. You just play normal like you do every day on the app or on prizepicks.com. And One entry will be randomly selected, and whoever is randomly selected will get a 6-pick flex with the following payouts. You get all six out of 6 correct, $1 million. 5 out of 6 correct, $80,000. 4 out of 6 correct, $16,000. You can get full details right now at PrizePicks.com/1million. You got to opt in at that link, PrizePicks.com/1million, to be eligible for the $1 million entry. Once you opt in, all you got to do is play the game like normal, and you could be the lucky winner. They make it easy to play the game at normal, because if you download the PrizePicks app right now or go to PrizePicks.com, you can get, if you're a first-time user, get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 when you put in the promo code LOCKEDON. So deposit $100, PrizePicks is going to give you $100 in matching dollars. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks is going to give you $50. Don't forget, enter that promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Let's talk about the risk. This is a risky business. Like I said, I think why I'm talking about the history of trading the number 3 overall pick is because the Portland Trail Blazers and Damian Lillard have made it pretty clear that what Dame wants is for them to not draft another 19, 20-year-old, but trade that pick for veteran help to help him have a real chance of being on a high-level competitive playoff team right away. But if you look at the history of trading the number 3 overall pick, very rarely have teams gotten back value that helps them get there. I think the Pau Gasol, Sharif Abdur-Rahim deal back, that's 22 years ago now. It's a 2001 draft. Like, ancient history and the way the league works and the way the league rules have worked. There's new CBAs. There's like everything is different from then. But I think in general, it informs kind of the inherent risk, right? You might get a Sharif Abdur-Rahim who is a good player, immediately becomes an all-star in your system, and then you look back and say, dang it, that's a Hall of Famer. Now, I don't know if Scoot Henderson's going to be a Hall of Famer and Rookie of the Year and all that stuff, but I know that there's inherent risk in trading a top 3 draft pick because the vast majority of MVPs in the league have come from top 3 draft picks. If you look at the history and why I kind of painted the picture for you, it is hard to get the sort of commensurate value for the level of the pick, which is why the recent reporting from everyone around the Blazers suggests that the team is sending signals that they're not going to be ripped off. They're not going to trade the pick just to trade it to acquiesce Dame's wishes. They are willing to go into the season if, whatever that might mean. Willing. It's like both sides got to be willing in this situation. But the Blazers are willing to go into the season with the third overall pick and Damian Lillard in tow and kind of just try to find that path. That path almost certainly still means trading Anthony Simons. I don't think there's any way where the Blazers go into the season with Scoot and Shaedon Sharpe and Anthony Simons and Dame. Something's got to give with just that backcourt. But in general, if Scoot's stock dropping to make him the clear third best prospect in the draft, with the general challenge of trading the number 3 overall pick, and the Blazers have basically, I think the sort of public posturing says like, hey, blow us away because the third pick is a really solid asset. So if you want this pick, you're going to, we are not going to give extra stuff. We'll make the salary match and you can get this really good young prospect and make it happen, or we'll gladly take the pick. But Scoot's stock dropping, the sort of general inherent challenge painted by the last 25 years of trading the number 3 overall pick, the inherent challenge in getting value for that pick. It's happened a handful. It's happened not even a handful. It's kind of happened twice, but one of the teams had the number 1 overall pick. It's kind of happened once, that 5 to 3 spot, 3 to 5 spot, and it was not good for the team it was not good for the team that traded back, right? It was better for the team that traded back. So maybe the Blazers find it with the sort of Kevin Love, OJ Mayo swap from 15 years later. Maybe Asar Thompson is the guy or whatever. But the Portland finds themselves in a position that is just uniquely challenging. They don't want to get ripped off for 3. Because if you get ripped off for 3, you can end up in a Pau Gasol situation. You can end up in a Luka Doncic situation where it's like, dang it. We thought, we just missed it. You can just, drafting is in the inherent challenges of drafting it makes it risky, but you have a real asset. They don't want to trade it for nothing. But their franchise player has been very clear that he doesn't want to play with more rookies. So they're kind of in this position where they're trying to thread the needle. It is like I said at the top of the show, I think they have a little more clarity of what it's going to look like, but I think it doesn't make the decision easier. And that's why I wanted to talk about the history of trading third overall picks, because there isn't like a long list of teams that's like, hey, trading 3 really works. Trading 3 really works. When Philly traded 3, it didn't work. When other teams have traded 3, it didn't work. When Atlanta traded 3, it didn't work. Atlanta's done it twice. Pau Gasol and Luka Doncic. Just take the dude who's a star in Europe. Just take him next time, Hawks. It'll be fine. I promise. Learn your lesson. So I think all of this is to say something that you knew, and that's why you're listening to the show, is that like the Portland finds themselves in a difficult spot. They want to do right by Dame. That's their number one choice, right? This team has telegraphed that. They want to do right by Dame. But you can't give a valuable pick away for nothing. So you might end up in a position where you have to talk to Dame and say, hey, listen, I know you didn't want another 20-year-old. I know you were very clear, no more 19-year-olds. I think Scoot will be 20 by the time the season starts. But like, no more youngsters. I want to go for it. I'm not interested in building and all those things, and say, value is value, and we can't just punt on this necessarily. I mean, maybe they can. Maybe they find value. Maybe they do. But I think why the Blazers have been sending the signals that they're not going to trade the third pick just for the sake of trading it, and all of those, then why that sort of have been the case is because they know that this is a valuable pick and that there are inherent risks in doing so. And if you just can't do it to do it, because there are myriad examples of it backfiring. That is the strange place they find themselves in. What do you do? Because Dame wants it to go a certain way, and they've probably had this exact conversation with Dame, but they can't. It's not just there's not a clean answer, right? Because Scoot isn't a clean answer. A 6'2" star guard. Trading the pick isn't a clean answer. The Blazers find themselves in a challenging position, but a fascinating one, as we are here 10 days away from the NBA draft. A week, handful more days after that, it's a coming, and that's why. Stick with us. Locked On Blazers. Tomorrow's show, Josh Lloyd of Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to join us. Later in the week, Kristen Peak of Yahoo Sports is going to join us. Whole bunch of fun. That's what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Tell your friends about the show. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.